All right, we are live. Hello, Chris. Thank you for joining me. We have Bobby with us as well. He's just going to grab something. So, how are you doing?
I survived the weekend, so I'm doing all right.
Yes. Well, yes, speaking of the weekend, which we were just talking about earlier, we had record-breaking temperatures here in British Columbia. In Lytton, I think it was at its highest point. It was not just like feeling like 45 or whatever, but it was actually recorded at 46.5 degrees.
I heard they broke that weather. I think they broke that on Monday, and it was almost 50 degrees. It was 49.6.
In Lytton?
Yes. Oh. Hottest temperature ever recorded in Canada.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote a little blurb on this, and I was like, wow. I mean, I think this goes without saying that this is unusually hot, and if anybody still wants to debate global warming, please. And there's still people that even after all of this, they're like, well, you know, in Saskatchewan, there was the Great Drought of 1937, and fair enough, which it was like 43, but this is 46.5 degrees. This is, you know, if you want to debate this, all I could say is that this is a harbinger of things to come if we don't get things straight.
Very much so. Yeah, we were hotter than Vegas. We were hotter than California. We were even hotter than Haiti over the weekend, and we had basically temperatures temperatures that average in like India, in like Delhi, of which usually hover around like 43, 45 degrees. We were hotter than them. So the fact that people can't see that this is clearly global warming. I don't know if you liked the heat of this past weekend, keep doing what you're doing, and we can have that weather all the time.
Well, and that's another good point, is because the guy one of these people that I was having this debate with, he was saying, where's the effect of, what did he say? He was like, you can't just say that this is global warming. You're doing more talking than listening and stuff like that. And it's just, okay, well, you know what? At some point, we do have to make a decision on certain things, such as, yes, global warming is happening. I mean, if we keep debating this, what do you want to wait until the polar ice caps have melted and we're all swimming? I mean, the sea levels are rising. We know this. Polar ice caps are melting. After all of this, I mean, it was very hazy during the weekend. You couldn't see the Mount St. Helens. Now, I'm not sure if you can see it now, but I would be curious to know what the ice caps on Mount St. Helens look like before and after. It started on Friday or Saturday?
Friday, I believe.
Yeah. Is it still pretty hazy out?
Not like yesterday. I think it was a little bit clearer today. But yeah, definitely yesterday, and then the day before when it was at its highest, it looked like apocalyptic skyline, like you couldn't see anything, couldn't see the mountains.
Which we keep getting this apocalyptic looking sky. I remember a few years back, it looked like we were on Tatooine from Star Wars. The way it was like just this deep blood red piercing through the fog, which of course was caused by forest fires. Mm-hmm. So again, I wonder, I mean, what's this summer going to look like? Also, when I was driving home from Princeton, or Tulameen, and when I was coming back, the rivers, like the Fraser River, were like way over flooded from the ice caps melt, or the glacial ice caps melting. So is there any way that we can correct this direction that we're on? I mean, I would say, as it sounds like, Chris, you agree, this is irrefutable evidence that global warming is happening, and it's going to have a serious toll on the planet and obviously humankind. Bobby, what are your thoughts? I'm also going to try and get that banner off because it's right on your head.
That one right there? I can just move over. I don't want to just yell out that it's global warming. I'm not saying it's not global warming, and I'm not saying it is global warming. I'm not a scientist, so I don't really know exactly if it's just directly associated with how hot everything is? It probably is. I'm guessing it is. But I don't want to just straight up just be like, no, this is global warming and like that's it. Like I wouldn't mind looking it up and seeing what it actually is causing global warming, and then we can find a solution from there. And if this is just part of global warming, and if this is not just a regular heat wave that is now, I don't know, maybe through time it's just growing in heat every single year. I really don't know.
It's definitely an irregular heat. It was essentially like a heat storm. That's what they're calling, like a heat bubble or something like that.
Heat dome. It was a dome.
Heat
dome.
So like it traps it.
I had heard something that like all planets in the solar system are getting hotter. So maybe it's not just like a global warming of Earth. Maybe just our entire universe is getting a little hotter, or at least our galaxy. I'm not too sure.
Well, two things. The planet does over, time get hotter. You can actually, there was a really funny video that Bill Nye, the science guy, did when he was like, I don't know why he was on this show, but with Tucker Carlson, who I can't stand. They were talking about global warming, and then he was saying, yes, the planet does get hotter over time, but you're talking about through normally thousands of years, we're now shortening it.
Human accelerator.
And to think that it has nothing to do, like I said, I don't think that the totality can be blamed, on humans, but certainly its acceleration can be, because I don't think it's, never before us have we had things where you're literally pumping pollutants into the sky that are destroying the ozone layer and that are making it easier for the sun to penetrate in. But also to your point about like if the whole solar system is getting hotter, the sun over time as well, the older it gets, it's gonna, I believe it expands. So that as well, if it, the more the sun expands, the hotter things will get, that are around it in our solar system. So it's a mixture of things, but I think that the main component, I think from the majority of scientists, it's like it's because of human interference that you are like I that's not normal. The weekend that we just had is not normal.
No, definitely
we're
not.
expediting the process.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is happening over and over again, like this is not a one-off. We keep getting forest fires, right? But every year. And I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the winters are getting more mild.
We got, what is it, 1 day of snow this year? Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. It was like maybe a couple days, but it went away. Even in Montreal, my grandmother was like, yeah, winter wasn't that bad this year.
Is winter normally pretty bad in Montreal?
Winter's awful in Montreal.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Bobby, you're going to say something. I cut you off.
Well, no, Montreal is quite cold and snowy in the wintertime.
Yeah.
No, actually, I do believe there was two. We usually get like the sort of November snowfall, and then what do we have, like April snowfall now, or like March, but we don't get anything in like June, February, December, which we usually get like when we were children and stuff like that. But I found now that we're getting snow in like November, nothing through like the winter time, and then getting some in March. I do remember getting like a little. It's not like it like snowed and we had to like stay home from work and school, but like came down.
I remember the first day I finished university, because he finished in March or something like that. So I'm off for the summer, and it was snowing. I was like, what the fuck? What kind of a summer is this? Yeah.
Well, I remember when we used to get like those big ass storms where like you'd have to stay indoors for a couple of days because the snow was like 6 feet tall. We don't have that anymore.
So how do you slow down? I remember the snowfall of 1994. Yeah. How do you slow this down? Is that even possible, or are we past the point?
I mean, scientists, since I've been hearing it since early 2000s, but like seems like the point of no return keeps getting pushed back a few years. But I think the latest thing was like, oh, if you don't change it within the next 7 years, it's going to be irreversible damage, and it'll just keep getting worse. I happen to think that it's probably a little bit too late, because I just genuinely don't think that anybody really, the people that can actually make a difference, in terms of like the big corporations and stuff, I just truly don't think that they care. And that, I think that's always my question, is people who are so adamant that it's not global warming. I'm like, what do you have to gain by denying? Like, why not even just open to the possibility that it could be? I don't understand why denying it seems to be people's, I don't get what you gain out of that. The only people that I would understand that would gain something would be the corporations, who would lose money by switching over to more eco-friendly, ways of doing business. But for the average regular person, I don't understand why they just can't say that it's global warming. I don't get that.
Like the average person, you're saying you don't understand why they would deny it.
Yeah.
Why would they deny it? Like let's theorize for a second what the argument is there, why you would deny it. Is it fear?
Like I said, I don't know. If you're afraid now and you're denying it, you're going to be really afraid when, the province goes underwater and waters are flooding from everywhere. And, BC suddenly has a tropical climate for the rest of time. Like, you're going to be afraid then. So I don't know why now, when you, still have some time to fix it, I don't know why this is the stance that you would take when the majority of vast majority of scientists are like, this is caused by humans.
Yeah. And the evidence is so clearly in your face. Well,
yeah.
I'm just saying it, man. That was crazy, that heat dome. I mean, 40, it was like 43 here. And then you got to think, I mean, Chris, for example, you live in an apartment. I mean, many people, that's almost like unlivable for them, right? If they're in an older apartment and there's not centralized AC, and if these things are just going to get worse. Also, like, I don't know if you guys have any flowers or anything that are outside, but my flowers got like scorched, right?
Yeah.
What does that
my
mean?
grass is all brown.
Yeah. What does that mean, right?
Well, and it wouldn't have been so bad if at the night, we got a break, but at night the sitting temperature was still like high 20s, if not 30. So there was the whole weekend of just, and like I said, thankfully I was able to go to my mom's, who has AC throughout her entire house, so I got some rest. But if you go to I tried to get my own AC unit for my place. If you go to, where did I go? Walmart, Home Depot, London Drugs, Best Buy, all sold out of AC. Amazon, they're like, you won't get it until like end of July. So
damn. Yeah, that's crazy. Gotta start freezing water or something like that. Now, I did see that apparently Ford or one of these big corporations. See, now you're talking about corporations, Chris, and I think that's just it. They're only going to do the right thing if it benefits their bottom line. For example, at the grocery store, if you get a plastic bag, they charge you like 5 cents or something. They're making money off of your decision to not use paper bags. It benefits them. That's the only time I see big businesses generally doing the right thing.
mm-hmm.
Ford apparently is supposed to, in the next 9 years or something like that, I don't know if it's Ford, but it's one of these big motor companies, is switching fully to electric engines. The other thing, though, is that with electric engines is, I think it's the lithium in the battery or something like that. The harvesting of it is not clean at all. It's like super degradatious for the environment. So it's like, what really is green or clean energy? Does that actually exist? And how do we do it, right?
Not that I've looked too far into it, but there is something called geothermal energy, which is basically just the energy from the core of the earth and the ground. I don't know much about it, but maybe there's something to that that's more environmentally friendly. I imagine it would be. It's, if the core of the earth is indeed,
so no matter where you are, you could get energy from
from the ground,
kind of like water from a well or something like that. Well,
basically, yeah.
I think if it wasn't so dangerous, nuclear energy would be the way to go, but there's just too much, especially in a highly populated city. I mean, we've seen with Japan, I think the Fukushima nuclear power plant, and they had their like a meltdown, and then through history of Chernobyl, like there's just too high of a risk. Although it is very clean, you just if you have any mess up, you could kill millions of people.
Could be catastrophic.
Yeah. The risk reward. I mean, because nuclear energy is a weird one, right? Because like you say, it's clean if it's contained, but then we've had these two examples. Like why did that happen in Fukushima? Was it because of a tidal wave or something?
I'm not sure exactly. It's the reactor, but I could have been. They had a tsunami. There's tons of earthquakes in Japan all the time, so I'm sure that's not good. Chernobyl was a core meltdown reactor, which happens because it gets super high temperatures, and if you're not balancing it all the time, then you can literally obliterate an entire town. So it's a shame that it's not safer, because that would be the way to go.
Yeah, I've seen another one too where they like take garbage, which I can't imagine this is clean energy, but anyways, they churn it or something like that, and they turn it into energy. But I think they do that by burning it, which burning garbage I don't think is a good idea. But I did see that there's a guy in Burkina Faso. His name is Yakuba. I can't remember his last name. Anyways, what he's doing is he's planting trees, but he's digging super deep and planting the trees. And what happens is the termites, like this is on the border of the desert. So desertification is kind of it's progressing. So what he did is he dug deep enough into the ground and then plants the tree, and then a termite goes in there and they like move around and eat around at the base of the tree, and it churns the desert that in turn gets more nutrients in it, and then it's actually reseeding the desert. Yeah. I was like, man, that's crazy.
Whoa.
Interesting.
Yeah. I got the link here. The documentary is called The Man Who Stopped the Desert. It's a little bit older, but yeah. So I mean, the other thing is, now we've all been to Vancouver. It's very gray, depending on where you are, right? But I was thinking, on the tops of buildings, what if you planted, like on the top of every building was like a green space, like a park, like there were trees and things like that. Because the problem with gray cities is it just reflects the heat. But if you had a green space on the top of all the buildings, that would absorb the heat. Would that ever be like something doable? I mean, that's just what I'm thinking, right?
I mean, it's definitely doable. Whether that actually
and solar
gets
panels
done.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, solar's a good one. I was just reading here. They're talking about rain as a source of energy through, I guess like through a heavy rain.
Perfect place here.
Exactly. I guess through the vibrations, you can claim up to 12 milliwatts that can be generated from a heavy rain. I don't know if that's.
It's have to rain a lot. Yeah.
Is milliwatts? Is that a lot though?
That can't be a lot. Oh, from the raindrops during a heavy rain. So I guess each raindrop would have 12 milliwatts, which I don't think individually is a lot, but collectively is probably good.
Yeah. Well, especially here.
It says it soon could rival solar, wave, and wind power as the dominant renewable energy production.
Have you ever seen those guys in like Saudi Arabia and or Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and they fly a plane like a Cessna into a cloud, like a storm cloud, and they throw salt or something like that, and the hope is that it generates rain. Have you guys ever seen that?
No.
Dude, it's crazy. It's also like extremely dangerous because they're flying into a storm and releasing like salt pellets, and apparently that makes rain that obviously these countries need, right? So yeah. But I mean, I've always been an optimist. I am hopeful that we can figure this out, but we're not going to figure it out if we keep debating over whether or not this is actually happening. I mean, to me, it's absurd. It's absurd.
I think we can do. I think we can do with all the waves, the rain. I've heard biomass. I don't like biomass. I've heard that was a bad one. But
That's the garbage one, I think.
yeah, it's the garbage one. But using it's the dump.
It's dumb.
But yeah, using all the the natural resources, the sun, the rain, waves, wind power. That sounds like the way to go, but I don't think there's any money in that. So I don't think corporations can really just, they're happy with their coal and their oil, and that's where all the money is. So why change that if they're making money? There's no money in, maybe there's some in nuclear, but I mean, there's no money in catching wind.
I think I've heard it said that we're the #1 exporter of coal.
Like Vancouver or Canada?
Yeah, well, Western Canada, yeah.
Oh, like
we're the
Alberta,
#1 exporter of, I mean, this was back in 2011 that I heard this, but we're the #1 exporter of coal, and we're sending it to China. So while we claim that we have such clean energy, that's one of our exports. Which, I mean, talk about performative elements. Canada is definitely known for that, right? Tomorrow is Canada Day, and as we've also talked about, is canceled the right word for it? I mean, what is the word? It's not being observed. I don't really know what's going on, to be completely honest. But I got the email from my daughter's daycare that because today is the last day before the break, that they're not celebrating Canada Day in light of these the residential schools and these unmarked graves that are being found, starting with the 215 in Kamloops, and then there's found more in Saskatchewan or something like that. Again, I apologize. I don't watch the news. I'm not the most up to date on this, but
I think there might have been one in Cranbrook as well.
Well, these residential schools were everywhere, man, and it was everywhere. And you could say like, oh, well, some of them were day schools. It's like, and Chris and I were actually talking about this beforehand, that this is a form of cultural genocide, is that they took away the privilege and the responsibility that parenting is from Indigenous people, and they forced them into residential schools. That if your child didn't go at the age of 5, someone called an Indian agent, which is a member of the RCMP, would come and put you in jail and take your kid away. So parents gave their children up for adoption so that they wouldn't have to go to residential school. That's fucked up. Like, how is that not cultural genocide?
It is.
Okay, but yet Chris was saying that that hasn't been acknowledged yet. Is that correct?
They don't call it a genocide.
What do they call it then?
I think they just call
I'm sorry, I'm not saying you know the answers. I'm just curious.
No, I mean they just constantly refer to it as a dark chapter in Canada's history, which is ridiculous because it is Canada's history.
It's a dark epoch.
It's Canada's history. Like it doesn't need a suffix or prefix or anything to describe it. It is Canada's history. That is what it is.
It's continued to this day.
Exactly. The fact
because it's racialized trauma.
They're not righting the wrong. And, I think that if you fast forward to next year, I don't even think this will be a topic of discussion unless they find, I think the timing of it where they found the unmarked graves, unless they find it again close to Canada Day. I don't even think this will be a topic of discussion next year. I think
you don't think it will be.
No. We move
like
on.
Most things, it probably won't be.
No, it won't be. We move on very quickly from whatever the latest thing, the latest hot button issue. And while a lot of people, I think specifically Indigenous people, will still be feeling the effects, because I'm sure for Indigenous people it is extremely difficult to see people prancing around and celebrating Canada Day while they're constantly reminded that their country doesn't give a damn about them, and hasn't, and continues not to, like flying your flag at half-mast. And there's I know now, like even at work now, it's just like, oh, happy day off tomorrow or whatever it is. Like they don't say Canada Day, but again, I know a performative element, or I know a performance when I see one. So yeah, I think if you were to fast forward to next year, it's not going to be a topic of discussion. People will be celebrating Canada Day again, and they'll just forget that all of this happened, as they have. It's not like we didn't know about residential schools before.
Yeah, well, you definitely have to you have to forget to remember with something like this. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like you just forget, like, oh, ooh, that happened, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's intentionality behind that forgetfulness.
Yeah. You get your brownie points, and then when you look like you've done the right thing, you move on to the next hot button issue or whatever, and then that's what it is.
Have you guys ever like celebrated? You don't have you never have to answer a question. You know, if you're like, nah, I'm not answering that. But have you guys ever celebrated Canada Day with pride?
Of course.
Like
Of course.
I'm Canadian.
Yeah, of course. I think. Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with feeling pride in your country, but as citizens of this country, you should also be equally able to say, like, this is not okay, you need to do better. You can be thankful for all that this country has given you, but at the same time recognize that this country doesn't give equally to the same people. Everybody receives a different, Canada means something different to everybody else. And just simply being born here does not mean that I have to be, oh my God, thank you so much for an accident of birth that I'm born here. Are there worse places to live in the world? Sure. But are there other places in the world where they don't,
depending on who you are.
Depending on who you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've celebrated Canada Day, but I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that I'm just like, well, I don't think, as the original inhabitants of this place, I don't think that, without fixing the wrong, I don't really know what it is that you're, oh, it's so great and peaceful and accepting and everything like that when you have a big red ledger in your history that you refuse to address or clean up. So,
well, the other thing too is that all throughout the Americas there were indigenous people. Before, like in Haiti, there were indigenous people.
Australia.
Well, Santo Domingo. Was it? I apologize. Was it called Santo Domingo, like the whole island? Because it's Haiti now and Dominican Republic, but
right.
Originally when it was a French colony.
Right. So Dominican Republic was the colonized not by France, so that was separate. But it was Santo Domingo at one point. But the Spanish was. That's why it's Dominican Republic, and you have the Spanish side, and then Haiti was French.
Gotcha.
Was the French colony.
Yeah, I forget the name of the previous name of Haiti, but anyways, there were indigenous people there before. Are there still indigenous people in?
They're not really spoken about nor seen. I don't think it's just you'd probably have to travel very far out to find them. Yeah. But they're not out in the open like that.
Yeah, and just I'm asking about Haiti because that's your background. But this is all like this is Barbados, this is Jamaica, this is Cuba, right? I think that's where Christopher Columbus landed was Cuba, and he thought that he found Indians. He thought that he had found India. That's where that term, that pejorative term, obviously now comes from, right? So. I mean, how do you solve this? How do you reconcile this, right? Because the truth is that we need to be honest with ourselves and say, this is what happened. That's truth. And then there's a reconciliation piece, which is when you reconcile, you repair the damage that's been done. But this started, I think residential school started like 1830 or something like that. And the last one closed in 1996. How do you
get rid of old white people in government? Because if there's one thing I know that old white people don't like to do, it is admit when they're wrong, and then to actually, clean up clean up the mess that they've made as well, and then minding their own business. They like to be in everybody else's business but their own, cleaning up their own mess. So. Yeah, as long as you have politics run by old white men, it's not going to get fixed. You're going to get performances and everything like that. And
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're gonna get that, and then it's like, okay, hope that was good enough. Now we're gonna move on to the next thing. But like I said, just last summer we saw them on, indigenous land illegally, kicking people out of their homes, not defending their, lobster fisheries. We've seen all of these things, and now all of a sudden you want me to believe that you care about them. It doesn't work that way. So it's the same people in government. Nothing has changed. So if you want to fix it, you need to get rid of old white men in government. You need to actually put people in there that look like the people that you want to give a damn about. You need to have more indigenous people in politics. You need to have more people of color in politics.
Representative.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we've done the white men in politics for a long enough time now, and it's clearly not working.
Well, now, white people, like, are we still, Bobby and I, are we still considered the majority? Or, because I think
the
in the
demographics are slowly shifting, but certainly in the United States, they are the vast majority. I think even in Canada, I mean, Black people only make up 3% of the population in Canada. So you have to think about what the rest is. Now there are other demographics, but no, I'm sure if you were to look at, the latest numbers of a census, which I think we did this year, I think you would still find it's majority white. But I mean, that is shifting. But again, in the places of power where it matters, look there and you'll see that
Yes.
it looks like you.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm looking this up, and it's not really it's not helping me. It just says that Canadians make up the highest demographic. It's like, well,
Unless
thank
they're
you.
using that as a term for.
But with that said, like 32% of the population is quote Canadian, followed by English at 18%. Canadians were 32% of the population. English were at 18.3, Scottish 13.9, French, Irish, German, Chinese, Italian, First Nations is at 4.4, and then Indian at 4, and Ukrainian at 3.9.
So majority white nations.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't see too many Scottish people around here.
Well,
No.
apparently, well, not apparently. My father was born in England. Like there's a history there. But do you see yourself as like hyphenated? Like I'm a Norwegian Canadian. I'm a Haitian Canadian. I'm a American Canadian. I'm a Scottish Canadian. Do you guys see yourself as that, or do you just see yourself as Canadian?
No, I'm Canadian with a Norwegian, English, Scottish background.
Right.
That's about it. Or a family lineage, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah. I have direct ancestry to Haiti. I was not born in Haiti, but certainly my father and the rest of his family were. But so I have direct lineage and ancestry there, but I've not traveled to Haiti. So I think more so I save the hyphenations for people who have immigrated and who have a duality to sort of their citizenship. Because, when you say the term African American, you have a lot of people who don't even know where in Africa they came from, never traveled to Africa. But if we're getting technical, the actress Charlize Theron is South African.
South
She's
African.
African American. She holds both titles. So we can't use it as like a synonym for, if you're trying to let them know that, I'm a whatever Canadian. I'm a Black Canadian with ancestry to Haiti. But I don't think I've ever referred to myself as a Haitian Canadian or a Canadian Haitian simply because I don't have any citizenship there. I've not been, but I certainly did grow up in Haitian culture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that influenced you, right? I mean, to say that my Scottish English background didn't influence me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
like
would be
my father is a Haitian Canadian. My grandmother is a Canadian because they were born there, came here, so they clearly can claim that title. But I myself wouldn't claim the same title just because I was born here. This is the only life I know.
So yeah, it's like it's a tough one because we talk about well, you should be proud of your country. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I love the privilege. The lifestyle that I was afforded here is because of what was done to the people that were here before me. And that's what we need to identify. And that's why we say, you know, I'm on the unceded territories of the traditional.
I hate it when people say that. I can't stand it when people say that.
But why do you hate it? Because hate's a pretty strong word.
It's so performative. And you have to understand, I do theater. So literally before every theater performance, you'll have the person come out and be like, oh, we're on, just want to acknowledge we're on the unceded territory. And I'm like, but what are you doing with that? Right. What are you doing with that? Are you donating a portion of the ticket sales to said people on unceded land for any charities? Are there any members of the board that are said members from unceded territory? Or are you just
are there? Are there?
There's not, because this is public record. You can go on any theater. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking strictly for theater now. On any theater's list of sitting members, and you can see who they are. They're not Indigenous. Right. And again,
so they're saying that because they have to. But who says they have to?
They're saying that
who says they have to
keep up the appearance of we just want to acknowledge what. That's why I can't stand it, because what are you doing with that? When you acknowledge something, what are you doing that? I can acknowledge that, you know, oh, my couch is on fire. I've acknowledged it. Okay, the couch is on fire. Yeah, I know. I've acknowledged it. Are you going to do anything? I've acknowledged it. It's fine.
Is theater doing anything? Are they providing awareness or
not that
education or anything like that? Because I work in education, and yes, they say that at the beginning of every announcement, right? And it's like, okay, but they are in education and they are doing things. Now, are they doing things because they have to, because that's their mandate? I
think so.
No, yeah, I mean,
yeah, because
they never did it before, and now all of a sudden everyone's doing it. Now I'm pretty sure they just have their little cue card there, and they go, okay, make sure you say the first line. You know,
it is a cue card. It is.
Yeah, it is 100%.
Because they're like, oh, it's the the semi-emu, right?
Yeah, a theater will tell you
how do I pronounce this?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll tell you, oh, by the way, because I've worked for theaters before, they're like, okay, we're donating, a portion of tonight's proceeds to, a women's shelter, whatever. Never, ever, not once have I heard of them donating any type of a proceed to anybody on said unceded territory, which is why, once again, it drives me mental when they say that. It's performative. It's, oh, thank you so much. We want to acknowledge that we get to play tonight on the land of And I'm like, for what? Whose benefit are you doing this for? Like, it's people are just like, oh, we're woke. There's a difference between being woke and being conscious. You can be awake. Doesn't mean I'm conscious, that I'm actively absorbing everything. I'm awake. That doesn't mean I'm conscious about it. And that's the same thing with that. You can tell me every day what unceded territory you're on. What are you actually doing to make it so it's a privilege for you to be on said unceded territory? What are you doing to give back? Or are you just going to say it every night so people will go, oh, so sweet. So sweet that he acknowledged the Indigenous people. So sweet. Do something. Donate a portion of your ticket sales to the people on the unceded territories. And I feel like in the future, on my next shows, that's what I'm going to do, is a portion.
So there's no mandate that they have to give money to.
No. There's no mandate for that. They don't have to give back. They don't have to give back to a charity that they don't want to. They don't have to have, like I said, look up any theater company in town, look up their board of directors, the sitting members. I will be very surprised if you can find more than 5 Indigenous people. Let's say even 3.
Is it now Indigenous actors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there much representation?
I know many Indigenous actors, and again, I gave you the name of one of them who was a playwright, Kim Senclip Harvey. There's another one, Caitlin Yacht, who has Japanese and I forget what particular lineage she has, but she's Indigenous as well.
Where's your cue card?
Indigenous work. Yeah.
Where's your cue card?
But yeah, and again, I've spoken to, I did a feature in a newspaper with Caitlin. We were both interviewed, and then it was like downtown by waterfront. They took a picture, and then we were walking home together. We were talking, and then she said the same thing. She's like, I can't stand it when they do that. When they talk about, oh, thank you for allowing us to play on your land, and like, and she's Indigenous.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying.
I'd say it's a pretty good authority on that too.
Exactly. And they have horror stories of things that have happened to them in theater with, people in power who just don't even understand what they're doing is so outrageous and problematic. But
if there's anything that I know about people in power, it's that they want to stay in power.
Exactly.
And how do they stay in power? Well, they try to stay on top of what it is that they need to be doing.
Yeah.
But not doing what they should be doing.
Yeah. So unless you're fully willing to, like I said, acknowledge and then do something about when you're doing a land acknowledgement, for me personally, I feel like keep that to yourself, because it just, and again, I'm sure different Indigenous people feel differently about these land acknowledgements. Some I'm sure feel like, thank you for acknowledging it. But for me, it literally would be the same as, oh, your house is on fire. Okay, I've acknowledged it. Are you going to call somebody to put it out? What are you doing? Oh, I've acknowledged it. It's fine. It's done. It's done.
Well, yes. And that's a very good point, is that, oh, okay, so I've checked that box. I guess my job
is done.
Or it's kind of like Black Lives Matter and, influencers making sure that they had a really good angle on their picture before they posted.
Or that black tile. That's what it is. It's a black tile. Land acknowledgement is a black tile. There we go.
Yeah. Good equation. So, but yes, I mean, education is a huge piece. But again, it's like, okay, well, you've read 15 books on the subject. Now what?
Do something.
Right. Now, the next one is perhaps a little bit more vague, shall I say. But there's this transgender athlete. Was a man, a woman. Her name is Laurel Hubbard, and she's competing in the Olympics for New Zealand, and she's an Olympic weightlifter. Things like the clean and press, the snap and jerk, all these kinds of things, right? So, what do we do about that?
About what?
What people are curious, like, should this person be allowed to perform? Does this ruin the credibility of the Olympics?
For more full context, this is a trans woman.
This is a trans woman, yes.
And she is
competing. So was a man, now is a woman. Is competing from Laurel Hubbard, is born February 9th, 1978, is a New Zealand transgender weightlifter, and she was selected to compete in the Olympics, which I don't know if is that still happening?
Against other females.
Against other women. Yeah, there's not a transgender category.
So then here comes the question as to, I guess what you're asking is that fair?
Yes, that is the question. Is
so
that fair? Have you guys heard of this, or is this?
No, I'm not paying attention to the Olympics. I usually don't care about Olympics, so I haven't heard about this.
Great,
wonderful. I definitely have. Yeah.
Well, bringing you up to speed. So, yes, this is now a woman who is competing. But the thing about this is that transgender is not like, it's not specific. It's different for everybody, right? Like I know of a friend of mine who now female and was not not big and jacked, right? This person is a power lifter and was a power lifter before transitioning into a female. So does that affect her performance?
Well, two things.
Against other women.
Two things. One, I think we have to be careful with the phrasing of things because words still mean things. So
of course,
transitioning into a woman, but not transitioning into a female. You cannot transition into a female. That's impossible.
Well, you can't artificially create a womb.
You can't change your chromosomes. So we have to basically be clear that there is a
I don't know
distinction
that. Yeah.
between the two. Man and woman are social
Right.
constructs created by humans. It's to describe humans.
Gender and sexuality. Gender and sexuality.
Well, sexuality and gender are not the same.
I know they're not. Gender is your parts. Yeah.
Yes, but it's a social construct. We don't say the
gender is a social construct or sexuality is?
Gender. Gender is a social construct. Sex is a biological classification.
I always confuse.
So
anyway.
Gender, so like for instance, we don't say like a man tiger or a woman zebra. We say female zebra, male tiger. So man and woman is just sort of a social construct within humans. And if you are to Google what is the definition of a woman, you'll get, depending on what dictionary you ask, it'll say an adult female or an adult male, man, woman, but it's only within human. So when people say transitioning into female, you cannot alter your sex. You can change your gender because it's a social construct, as I understand it. Mm. You cannot change your chromosomes.
Right, yes.
You can't change your chromosomes. You cannot, as of yet, create an artificial womb, ovaries. It's all artificial. So, and so that's my thing. I think is that the phrasing has to be careful, because when people say transition to a female, that's an impossibility. Transitioned into a woman. But again, in terms of talking about fair, because again, as I understand it, a trans woman is considered a woman, a real woman, but is not a female. Whether anything you've added or subtracted, when, a medical professional takes your blood, they're going to be able to see XY chromosome. It doesn't change. You can add however much you want. You can subtract. You're still going to have an XY chromosome, no matter how you identify, or an XX, depending on where you fall.
No amount of science can change your chromosome.
You cannot change that. Like I said, at the end of the day, I can take an orange, paint it red, add a stem. Yeah. You cut into it, it's still an orange.
That's an orange, and that's a comparison.
But the analogy is that you can add however much you want on the surface or cut away. It does not change inside. Biologically, scientifically speaking, it does not change your DNA.
Or else they would just be called a woman and not a transgender woman.
It comes with a prefix. Could do that. Exactly.
Transgender woman, right?
It comes with a prefix for a reason. There is a difference between the two. Now, if we're talking about competing within the Olympics, do I think that that's fair? No, because we understand, and this is not opinion, this is science, males, by and large, have a different physiology, different strength, speed,
skeletal structure
than women. And that happens, by the way, not only within humans, but sexual, I think it's called dimorphism, happens throughout nature, throughout the species. You can have a male and female bee, like a honeybee, that look that they are the same species, but they are not. The size is different, function is different, and all of those things. They're sexually dimorphic, I believe is the word. So we understand that there are differences between males and females. Strength, speed, probably being key amongst when we're talking about, why in the NHL
clean
is it
and
not
jerk? The clean and jerk, like the presses, right?
Yeah. But again, why don't male tennis players compete against? Why is it not all the same league? And
there was that movie where a man competed against a woman tennis player and he got his ass whooped, which I haven't seen, but yeah, I do understand you.
Right. By and large, though, and you can even find there was an interview that Serena Williams did years ago. I think she was on David Letterman, and she was like, I am so happy to only be playing against other females, because if I had to play against the males, she's like, the guy who's ranked 300th in the world would probably kick my ass. It's just not the same. The physicality is not the same.
Yes.
So when you see things like,
generally speaking, of course,
very by and large, The physiology is just different.
Well,
So when
you know how
see,
people like to latch on to words and say, "What do you mean? There's this case."
yeah.
There will
But
always
by and large, you
be-
ask any biologist, who has studied humans, they will tell you that.
Hey,
So when you,
just a quick note.
yeah,
The fastest male serve is 263 kilometers an hour, and the fastest female serve is 220 kilometers an hour. So if you can imagine somebody just
Both would
rifling a
hurt.
ball, 30, yeah, like
Yeah.
what did I say? Yeah, 40 kilometers an hour harder. Something you've probably never, or the female's probably never seen before. That'd
right.
be
But now
crazy.
take that, and now imagine you have a trans woman playing volleyball against females. You're probably you could get a serve that is equal to that of the male that you mentioned, because they're of the same sex.
You did just bring into mind.
It's not fair. You saw that, when there was I forget the name, but there was a trans woman wrestler who dominated, broke records. And it's like, trans woman sets new record for, in wrestling. And I'm like, duh. Like, what are you saying? Of course. So for me, I don't see as how it's fair for a trans woman to play against other females when, by and large, generally speaking, there is a very clear physical advantage. Very clearly. I don't see how that would be fair.
Yeah. And especially in something like weightlifting, where it's a strength challenge. We're not curling, which is, that doesn't require any sort of strength. And one of the biggest differences between men and women is the ratio of testosterone and estrogen, where males win out heavily for the testosterone, which is how you build your muscles quickly. And so if you're going from a guy that has been competing as a male, which, by the way, I looked it up, and I think his record was he was in some tournament, and he basically came like dead last by like 30 kilograms. So him going from like basically, I'm not very good at this, or at least I'm not like the top level. He's good enough to compete, but not the top level. But what if he could transition to a lower level? No offense, women, but basically he's going to go from dead last,
different level,
a completely different level, dead last over here to possibly, because apparently he's, there are some strong women. I looked up the Olympics, and there's actually, I believe, someone from China who's actually favorited to win. But my point being,
well, hopefully she gets a drug test. But anyways,
yeah. So I looked up the kind of requirements for testosterone levels in the Olympics. And first off, you have to be female, and you have to be considered female for the last 4 years. All right. What was it? What was their name? Hubbard?
Yeah,
check
Laurel
the box.
Hubbard.
Laurel Hubbard. Check the box.
Laurel.
But then your testosterone levels are allowed to be up to 10 nanomoles per liter. And the elite females in sports have anywhere from 0.27 to 1.72. So even at the max, this guy could possibly have 5 times the testosterone, is allowed to have up to 5 times the testosterone.
How is that fair? It's not. That's what I'm saying, is that I'm all for, feeling accepted and everything like that, but there is a reason why there is male and female sports. It's because it would not even be fair if you put female hockey players with male hockey players, female basketball players with male basketball players, tennis players, whatever it is that you want to say. Think about in wrestling, it wouldn't even be fair. So how does
UFC would almost be like, why am I watching this?
Yes, it would be like, this is insanity.
This is disturbing. Yeah.
So how then does the logic not extend to the trans side of things? Because again, your identity, great, fair point. But again, when we're talking about a competition based on, feats of strength and you have males competing with males, there's a reason for that. If you have a trans woman who is still male, we understand this. I'm not saying something that's not true. A trans woman is still male. She is not female. You then, like Bobby was saying, the levels aren't even close to being the same. So that's why it's not fair. Now, this person from New Zealand, I don't think the games have started yet. So who knows where she will place and how she will perform. But I'm saying there, by and large, is a clear disadvantage that you are placing the females who this trans woman is competing against. It's a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, it's this person has an advantage.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, like, perhaps it's case by case, perhaps it isn't. I don't know. I'm not the officiant, but would it matter when this person started their transitioning, or not at all? I mean, they're always producing testosterone. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Yeah. I honestly don't.
I think there probably is. Yeah.
You'd have probably to have a person on, or at least a doctor who could explain how hormone therapy works. But I don't think you completely erase testosterone. And I still think that you, even despite all of that, the person would still have a clear physical advantage. Like, even if you were, let's say you had transitioned and done hormone therapy for 5 years, you cannot change fundamentally inside your sex. You cannot. Science has not come that far. You can't change it.
You were sharing what you learned from Charlemagne, and the transgender woman that he had on.
Yeah, Flame Monroe.
Flame Monroe, and what you got from that interview.
Well, it was because.
Again, that's one interview.
Yeah.
Of course, you know that, but I just mean for listeners. Yeah.
For me, it was the first time that I understood, sort of in a more palatable, less confusing way, sort of transgenderism, because
is that how they use it? Transgenderism.
Transgenderism, I believe that's what it's still called.
Yeah.
I could be.
I'm not sure. I'm curious.
Like I said, I'm not the expert on it, but I think transgenderism is still an accepted term as far as I know. But yeah, no, it was just, and I suggest everybody. I think Flame Monroe's been on interviewed. I think like 3 times on the Breakfast Club, which is the show that Charlemagne is on. But it's the one where Flame is wearing like a yellow dress. That's the first time she was on. But she was very, very clear. She was just like, I can add however many parts and wigs and stuff like that. But she goes, I'm a whole man up under this wig. Like, there's no, you cannot change that simply because you want to. And she said, you can identify as a orange and purple cow or a green star, Saying so does not make it so. So I think by and large, from the very limited amount of trans people that I know, is that the argument has never been that I am a real female. It's always been I am a real woman. Because if we can accept the fact that woman is a social construct, then anybody could really fit into that if they so chose. If they so chose to identify as that social construct.
So Shania Twain was right. Man, I feel like a woman, not man, I feel like a female.
There you go, if that helps you.
that actually kind of does help me, because those 2 terms, I'm like, it's so male, female. But there are are there human hermaphrodites?
Like intersex,
that are born,
I think is what they're called.
Excuse me, sorry. That's probably
I believe so. Intersex. But yeah, there are the rule, or the exception to the rule is not the rule. So people often like to do, well, there are these types of people. Yes, but they are not. They are a very, very small percentage.
Yes. Oh, 100. Like not even 1%.
Right. So like people like myself who were, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know where to put
to the right. To the right.
There we go. Right there.
I
was born with 2 sets of extra fingers.
Oh.
When I was born, so I have 6. And that is, my father has that, my sister has that, so it's a genetic thing. And yeah, I have it on both sides of my hand right there. There we go.
Yeah.
But
and it's symmetrical.
Yeah. So I had 6 fingers. It didn't have a bone in it though. So they like tie a string around it and it falls off. But when I was born, I had 6 fingers. But society, based on these genetic abnormalities, does not make gloves with 6 fingers on it. It's like, this is such a small percentage that we don't restructure all of society for the very, very small possibilities of intersex or people with 6 fingers or 6 toes or whatever. You don't restructure society in that way based on the very limited. So, you know, while there are intersex people, it's not the majority, the rule, let's say.
It's not a very high number.
Exactly.
Versus accessibility, which, for example, if you're in a wheelchair and you're like, oh shit, there's only stairs here. That what I'm getting at is there are certain requirements, right? But for example, for your 6 finger, it's not like there's going to be a market for 6 finger.
No.
Was it longer, or is that as long as it's always been?
No, it was like shorter than the pinky, and it kind of just like hung off to the side a bit.
But they removed it.
Yeah, they tie a string around it and put some sort of powder on it, and it sort of kind of shrivels off and falls off. Like, my father had it, and my sister has it, so it's passed through my father. But yeah, it's a genetic mutation, shall we say. And but yeah, so what Flame Monroe was saying was that you cannot restructure everything and sort of make people see you as such an, and my fear, like, because I think that, you know, while transgender people have been around for quite some time, the sort of height of popularity is not the right word, but of knowing of them as we do now, I think
consciousness
is super high. Yeah. But it's again, as far as I've been told, they're not trying to say that they are real females, because again, you would be sort of going against science and fact, because again, throughout nature, species, plants, male, female, some are asexual, some are both, but by and large throughout nature, penguins, giraffes, tigers, spiders, ants, male, female. So and so for me, the thing is that when sort of, I guess, when all of this sort of came to like mainstream news, and so we're seeing it all the time, what my thing was, I was like, when you open one door, you have to invariably open the rest. And I was like, I wonder who the first person to say that they're transracial is going to be. And sure enough, Rachel Dolezal came out and said, I identify as Black. And I'm like, you can't do that.
This is a white woman, right?
Yeah. Who put on some...
I said that with confidence.
Yeah, she is. But even to this day, she's like, no, simply identifying makes it so. So for me, I think as long as we're not trying to, again, change scientific definitions, I'm all for people having their place in the world, being accepted for who they are. But again, if you're going to try to bend the rules of science to fit your definition, and again, science and facts don't care about feelings. So science doesn't change simply because you don't agree with how it's structured or how it is. So I think, I think for me, as long as we're not trying to say that being a trans woman means that you are female,
right?
Which then again, for me, extends to the Olympics. If we can admit that a trans woman is not female, why then is a trans woman competing with females? Because
what they're saying is that she's not only is she a woman, she is a female,
which is not true.
Right. So, but my question is, like, I always try to understand the argument for something, because it does reveal the biases behind it or whatever, the thought process behind it. And I do wonder, like, why is it that they're doing this? Is it because they're afraid that they don't want to be not inclusive, to be excluding somebody?
I think it's the pressure, definitely. I think if you have enough people yelling at you to do something, especially about equality, you're just gonna kind of eventually break and just go, okay, fine. We'll have transgender people like to be honest, I think it might be a little bit of an experiment, like on a global scale. Like, let's see how she does. Because the one thing I go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say, I feel like it's a no-win situation either way, because she's either gonna win or come top 3 and win a medal, and then everyone's just gonna blow up and go, see, we told you, it's just a man, competing with the women and just dominates. Like, you guys are idiots. Or on the other side of that, the other comes, I don't know, 6th, 7th or something and kind of sucks. But then what that does is that opens up the door to just go, all right, well, all trans people can just compete. Sure, let's do it. This person didn't win. And then I think that's when you'll start having a lot of problems.
Well, then it's going to be, okay, let all the sexes compete together then. Since clearly there's no difference, if that's what we're saying. That, like I said, when you open one door, you have to be very careful, because all of the other doors, invariably, you have to open. Because again, when somebody asks, if somebody can identify as, a woman who was born male, why can't I identify as Black? Why can't I identify as this? Why can't, you have to answer all these questions. And why is only one person allowed to be right, but the others are not? Because in the and I've been asked this before in the case of that Rachel Dolezal woman, well, why is she wrong? Why can't she identify as Black? And I'm like, because she's not. And they're like, yeah, but then how is transgenderism then? And I'm just like,
isn't that cultural appropriation though, saying that you're like somebody, that you're like a culture that you're not, like I'm Black when?
Well, I think Rachel Dolezal actually made the argument that, Black is a feeling, but I'm like, then why are you adding bronzer and tanner to your skin, getting like Afro textured wigs and stuff like that? Why, if it's a feeling, why are you doing all this extra stuff to make yourself appear that way? If it's a feeling, which then I mean, and again, that's the thing, is like,
what is Black?
Well, right. Exactly. But the thing is that if you were to ask the majority of transgender people if Rachel Dolezal could identify as Black, they'd say absolutely not. That's absurd. And then they would then of course be asked, then why is yours valid? And that's sort of the thing, is like, how do you answer that? When you open one door, if you're saying it's okay for you, then for another person, like I said, Rachel Dolezal has said, for my entire life, I've always felt this way. I've always identified this way. So why is Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, allowed to be opened with, accepted with open arms, but I'm shunned? And I'm just like,
well, because you're two different cases.
Fair question.
Yeah.
Like, why is one widely accepted and one is not?
This is in the case of the woman who's identifying as Black. And
I think she's a total nut job. And I'm just like, you can't just identify as Black just because you feel like it. But then again, if we're saying that as a society now we're becoming accepting of saying that, people who are born male can transition into women and it'd be okay. I've heard the argument from, certain women in my life that are like that say, it's quite insulting to me that a person can essentially just study female behavior and then mimic it, and then mimic it, and then say that, I am that now, that I have your experience. Yeah. Without having ever lived. But
that's so broad what a woman's, because no two women have the same. True. You know what I mean?
Very, very true. But then how that, again, I think that would be a good thing.
I've never been a woman. Yeah.
But again, look at what you just said. I have never been a woman. And how would I know what it's like to be that unless I was that? Same thing with Black. How do you know what it's like to be Black unless if you've never been it? And that's sort of the question that I've always had is, how can you know inside, well, I've always internally felt like a woman if you have never been that?
You might be able to abstractly conceptualize by, say, reading like a ton of books or something, but you would never innately know. And
that's the thing.
There's
Yeah.
a difference between something that's innate and perhaps something that is, I guess, developed.
Yeah, but I think like what Flame Monroe was saying in that interview, she said,
Yeah.
I learned how to be a woman not from looking at other men, but I looked at other women. I looked at my mother, my aunties, my grandmother. And essentially what Flame said, you know, Flame identifies as a trans woman. She said, we are, and this is what Flame said, we are female impersonators. She said, I will never be
I see. Yes, female, because that's the sex.
She said that's where I got it from. I got it from
part.
looking at how my mother behaved, my aunties behaved, my grandmother behaved. I didn't get that from looking at a man. I am imitating, I am re-putting out there, mimicking what I learned from the females in my life.
Right.
So again, each trans person I'm sure has a very different experience and how, you know, their journey is.
Of course. Yeah.
But again, it would be interesting, you know, your friend, if they were interested in being interviewed, I'd be very interested to, because there's a lot of sort of questions that I never sort of get a definitive answer on in terms of the trans experience, because
I did interview her.
Oh, you did?
Maxie. Yeah.
Has it already come out?
Yes.
Oh, it must have been an
like
early
it was one of the first.
Earlier one.
It was like one of the first episodes.
I haven't listened to the earlier one, so I'm gonna listen to that one and see. But yeah, that's always been interesting to me, because like I said, if all it takes is you feeling that way, you could feel as anything and then say that that's what I identify as.
And I think that you're talking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to your point, subjective versus objective truths.
Yes.
Right. And what you're talking about is that like scientific law, like the law of gravity, that's an objective truth. That's true. It's a capital T true.
Yes.
Now, flat earthers or whatever, they might have a really good theory, but that's a subjective truth because it's not a scientific law.
Try running off the earth and tell me how far you get.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really shitty example, but
but again, essentially that's what I'm saying is that you can. And I've only seen sort of a very extreme cases where you have certain trans people that are arguing that they should be considered female, like trans women that should be considered female. I haven't heard that argument made, but it would be like, again, just because you feel that does not make it so. And so we cannot restructure science based on feelings. Science is based on science. Like, again, I could disagree with gravity all day long, but let me try to jump off a bridge and tell gravity I don't believe in it. You know, it's not going to work out very well for me.
Yeah.
So I think as long as we are sort of clear as to the difference between man, woman, male, female, then it sort of doesn't descend into sort of this sort of wishy-washy chaos where there are no rules anymore.
Could it descend into that?
I mean, I think so. I think if you just say that there are no rules for anything, and however you feel and whatever category you want to put yourself in, wherever you want to compete, I think that you could, you know, I think since, you know, there is a reason why male and female are separate. WNBA and NBA, you put them together, it would be a mess.
I also think it would create some chaos in the fact that, you know, if one transgender woman, for the record, there was 9 Olympic transgender, women or female? Women.
Trans women, yeah.
That competed to try to get into the Olympics, but no transgender men. Just
no,
which is like
to get in.
Exactly. No one's going the other way to try to, you know,
interesting
hang with the guys, as they would say. But my point is, say Hubbard wins and they accept trans people as you know, okay, like, go ahead. You know damn right there's going to be those asshole dickheads that just go, all right, well, I'm not good enough to be in the Olympics, but if I just go and you know, say I'm a transgender woman, I can go win myself a medal.
Yeah.
And then I think you're going to see a flood of transgender women just enter the Olympics because now it's accepted.
And think about also all of the females who would be like, well, why am I even doing this then if I'm not if it's not even a fair, you know, it's not even fair at this point.
Yeah.
Why am I even competing anymore if we're just going to allow whatever? I think that would be a very valid question as well, that you'd have females that would feel like, I'm not doing this anymore then, if we're just going to allow males to compete against me.
It is quite ironic. It is quite ironic that, you know, the people are yelling for equality to have the transgender woman compete, but then the equality is absolutely smashed when you put a male in with all the females, and all the females are sitting there just going, well, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Now what do we do? Now their equality is gone.
To what extent is that actually happening though? Like I've heard of,
no, it's not happening yet, I think, is what Bobby is saying. It's saying though it could be a slippery slope. Again, depending on, I don't think that this is or she may be the first trans woman in the Olympics to have competed. I don't know.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sure that she is a pioneer, and they're pretty much looking her as the guinea pig, the experiment, to be like, let's see how this plays out. Because again, I can see that if, you know, this person wins a gold medal, that you could have, you know, on one end of, you know, the side that's all for this, like, yes, look, you know, the first trans woman winning, you know, a gold medal. But then you could have the other side being like, well, yeah, of course she won a gold medal. It's you know, she's male. Of course she won. So it could go either way. But I think that you need to be very careful with things like this, because, you know, like you said, Bobby, it could just descend into this sort of thing where when you're trying to really be equal and fair to everybody, when you try to please everybody, you please no one. So,
well, just ask Justin Trudeau.
Well, exactly. And I think that there's a reason, and I don't really want to make this comparison because it's not the same thing, but there's a reason why the Special Olympics are separate from the Olympics. Because if you have people who have certain disabilities or handicaps, or whatever the word is to describe it, it's because you're at a certain disadvantage playing against people who say might have both legs or whatever. Yeah. But I don't know if then the without it coming across as like segregation, but we clearly in society do segregate things based on whatever criteria.
Sure.
But I think that if you have the Special Olympics, perhaps in the Olympics you have a trans category, or if you have a trans woman, perhaps she should be competing against the males. I don't know what that looks like, but I definitely don't think it's fair for a trans woman to be competing with females.
The Trans Olympics does have a good ring to it.
Okay.
Transnational Olympics, yeah. Well, yeah, you did mention segregate, and thinking about human society, does human society segregate because they're afraid that they're equal, or that they're afraid that somebody's better? Because in the case of the Special Olympics, the Olympics is able-bodied, right? The Special Olympics is providing, I don't know if that's equity or if that's equality, but something comparable for people who do not have all the same privileges as an able-bodied.
And usually they have to work twice as hard, you know, in those cases to make up for the lack of whatever that the others have. They have to work twice as hard to overcome that.
But creating those isn't really segregation, is what I'm saying. That's almost like giving equity or equality opportunity. My question is do we segregate because we're afraid that other, which is why we segregate, it's the other, is superior, or that they're inferior? Why is it that we segregate?
It depends how you're doing it.
It's the context.
It depends on context. If you're doing it because you're segregating Black people because you think that they're inferior to you, or you think they carry diseases that we don't, that's a different type of segregation, but or exclusion. But I think that if you are doing it so that you are giving everybody an equal opportunity to represent in, representing their country in a sport through the Olympics, which is a very old practice, I think that to me would be fair to say that, we have the We have the Special Olympics, we have the Olympics, and then if you wanted within the Olympics itself to have a trans category, or if you wanted to have trans Olympics in their own thing, that's a question that, would have to be, I'm sure, go through several groups and to see how that would fit. But I don't think that it would be based on we're afraid of the results. I think it's giving the female athletes their ability to shine, the male athletes their ability to shine. And like Bobby was saying, it's funny how we don't see it the other way around, where it's a trans man competing with other men. It's funny how you don't really see that. But
perhaps therein lies the definition, is that this is the men or the male. This is the male 500 yard. This is a female 500 yard. But they use that language that you're saying is biological in nature, male, female, not this is the, this is the male gender 500 meter. This is the woman gender 500 meter. The name is right there in it, is what we've identified. So even though this is a transgender woman, why would she not still be competing against men unless there was an advantage there?
Because I think that then you're also bringing in sort of the personal aspect. You would probably, she would probably feel like, well, that's insulting. I identify as a woman, therefore I should be competing with the other women. Now you're being insulting to me and telling me that I'm not a real woman. Yeah. And then you would get into the whole sort of matter of like, what do words really mean? Because if you on your phone right now, if you were to ask Siri, what is a woman? Siri will say a woman is an adult female. You then ask Siri, what is a female? A female is somebody who produces
who
has ovaries, produces eggs, whatever that definition is. So by Siri's definition, it wouldn't be accurate. But if it's an adult female, then by Siri's definition, that doesn't work. Yeah. But it depends. I think that you would have a lot of people that would have a problem and would say that you're not recognizing my identity as as I see myself. You're telling me that I'm not a real woman. And then that opens a whole other can of worms, rather than if you were to maybe, I don't know, rename it as the female category, the male category, then you could more easily place it, because you're not, as far as I know, you're not going to find a trans woman that says she's female. As far as I know.
You're not going to find. Yes. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So is this including Hubert in the Olympics, or however you say her last name? Is this the furthest extension of, sort of, as you've mentioned, the performative elements of, okay, this is what we have to do. We have to include people. Is this performative, or is this people going like, I guess we try this? Like, what's the sort of the thought process behind it? Why is this happening?
The latter.
Be experimental.
I think it's more of the latter. I think it's more so they're trying to see, okay, well, we want to respect these individuals and their identity and how they see themselves. So perhaps it won't make much of a difference. Perhaps it will be fair. I think this is more of a trial and error thing. And that, this woman has a lot, riding on her shoulders right now, because she is the first.
I do think there might be an avenue where a very extensive calibration might have to happen, where, like, for example, the testosterone thing, where you're basically able to have 5 times the amount of testosterone as like the elite women. If you kind of bring that down, bring that back, and put in more rules, put in more regulations, I think there's probably an avenue where, like, as long as it's like kind of strict, like you have to basically be a woman from, X amount. I don't know what they would do. I'm not the Olympics expert.
Yeah.
And it would have to be from a sport by sport calibration. But I do find it interesting that they started off with weightlifting and not something like soccer, or there's I don't know any other sports
or
off
running,
the top of my head.
perhaps.
Running, yeah.
Long
It
distance
is kind
running.
of odd that they I guess they didn't just choose weightlifting, because it's not like there's just a transgender participant in everyone trying. I believe there was 9. I don't know. I kind of want to look that up. I don't know if maybe they just didn't do it as well and just weren't accepted, because you do have to.
Yeah, I mean, simply being male does not mean you're going to get into the the weightlifting.
You
know,
do have
you're
to be
not going to
good
get
at it.
accepted. But yeah, I think it's more so they're trying to see, maybe this will work. Maybe maybe we're able to start having trans athletes compete in their respective, however they identify. But again, I think you have to think about, should this person win
or not? Like, what are the consequences?
What then happens? Because I think then you're going to have a lot of female athletes who were competing again saying, how is this fair? Like, of course she won. How is this fair? You could have that. And then I think, I hope that it works out for the best, but I think it's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
And that's why I wonder, to what extent is this, including this a form of societal pressure? Like, they're just like, oh man, if we don't bring this person in, what are the consequences?
Yeah. I mean, I don't like, I feel like the Olympics is a big enough organization that I don't think they cared much about a boycott. But I think, it's going to be interesting to see. I might just actually watch that category just to see.
It'll be the first time I ever watch weightlifting.
Yeah, because
the fact that we're talking about this is like, wow, what great press for all of the competitors. They're probably like, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, and then they're getting interviewed, and they're pundits on CNN and stuff like that.
I don't envy this, this athlete's position, because right now I'm sure she's like, oh God, they're going to be mad if I win. And then if I don't, then, I'm letting the trans community down, because, I don't envy the position that she's in. But again, I think we have to be also very, very careful when we're talking about things that we know to be scientifically true, and we cannot mix feelings in that. So like I said, as long as you're not, trying to redefine science, and what we know, we'll be fine.
And to your point, my hope is that, we can get away from using our feelings to shut down uncomfortable conversations, right? Like, yes, I understand that you feel like a woman, but we do need to have a conversation about, again, like we said, is this the proverbial line in the sand, right? That, okay, let's suss this out. Somebody just added here, there have been psychiatrists who have said, this is Ang Renee Music. Side note, there have been psychiatrists.
Angela.
Oh, Angela.
Yeah.
Hey. Who have said transgenderism is an outward expression of multiple personality disorder. So, because you mentioned choice, or we were talking about choice. I don't want to solely point out anybody, but we're talking about choice, and why does somebody choose to do this? And is that not an important part of this?
Does
that not play a factor?
Choosing to go through transitioning is a choice, but feeling that way, however, I don't believe is. Much like I don't think that human sexuality is a choice. It's like, because again, one, and well, maybe this day and age is different, but back whenever it was not as accepted, no one would have chosen to be gay. You either are or you aren't. It's just sexuality doesn't work that way. You can't turn it on and off like that. Otherwise, you have a lot of people who are gay, who are shunned from their families. If it was,
I think a lot of people are both. I think a lot of people.
And then you have both. You have fluidity. Yeah. Sexuality to me is more fluid than anything.
Yeah.
It's not a definite thing. It just depends on the person that's in front of you. Whatever. Sometimes you'll be very surprised that whatever person that's in front of you, they'll make you feel whatever feelings, and it might not look exactly how you thought it would look. But I think in terms of multiple personalities, my experience, because we have a family friend that actually we saw over the weekend on Sunday, my brother's childhood friend who is transitioning into a woman, I believe, doing hormone therapy.
Because not all people, sorry to interrupt, but not all people, for the record, have to go through therapies and surgeries. Just for listeners, right?
Some don't feel the need to do all of that. But I even found when talking to her that there was a difference in personality. That I felt a more feminine energy that I didn't feel was present pre-transition. Now, I don't think that's a multiple personality disorder. I just think that when you settle into who you see yourself internally to be, things will change. Your appearance will change. Your personality may change as well. You may abandon certain things that make you feel the more masculine side of what you used to be. But yeah,
right.
I think maybe. Go ahead.
Sorry, I had a bit of an aha moment that what I picked up from what you're saying is that I made this decision. I'm going to be a woman. Now I'm going to take on the characteristics of what I think a woman are or is.
How I see myself to be internally, and now I don't have to block it and hide it from the rest of the world. So invariably, while the outer changes, your personality will as well, because you no longer have to repress.
And you're being honest to your identity or what you perceive as your identity.
Exactly. And I would never say, because I've known this family friend for a very long time, as long as my brothers have known her. I would not say it's a mental disorder. I would just say that I felt a difference in personality. But it wasn't like she was switching it on and off and going back and forth from whatever. So I think we do have to be careful a bit with the phrasing. When we're saying it, it's a disorder and it's whatever. But yeah, I think that a lot of times it's just, I wish, if it's not hurting anyone, people need to learn to mind their business.
But it's hurting me.
It's hurting you?
It's not hurting me. It's not hurting me. No, I believe the same thing, that, be who you are as long as it's not a serial killer. Right.
Be who you are as long as it's not a serial killer, and as well, don't
harming others.
What Flame Monroe was saying, don't expect society to restructure everything because now you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So in the case of the Olympics, they're trying it, but if it doesn't work for whatever reason, they tried it. They tried to make it work, and if it just doesn't work, it doesn't work. But don't expect society for something that you just came to understand to automatically jump on board and be like, we're all for it, because that's performative.
Well, I do think that can sort of be the way with the pronouns, and it's like, well, I am this, and it's like, okay, but not everybody knows that right away. So you have to
don't
be
get
patient.
mad at people for not knowing, and that's.
I mean, I'll call you whatever you want, but I'll always be respectful.
Yeah.
But you got to be respectful of me too.
Yeah, exactly. Just be correct. If you need to correct, but there's a way to correct somebody without belittling them. Just be like, oh, actually it's she, but fine. Not like, it's she. Like, there's a difference in energy, because if you give me that energy, I promise you I'm not going to give a fuck about your pronouns. Not that I'm going to misgender you, but I'm going to give you back with that energy if I don't give a fuck about you either. So
somebody... No, I agree. I agree. Yeah. But for some people, it is obviously, it's a sensitivity, right?
Right.
So I'll say, oh, I am sorry. And I will...
Yeah, thank you for telling me.
I will always work on, again, mutual reciprocity. That's what I'm after. This is a myth now that, see, here's the other oh my God, I can't even think of the term. What is it called? Transphobia. Fuck, so many terms. This is a transphobic myth, I would say. Is this person said, what about pedophiles who disguise themselves as transgenders? And there's this fear that people who are transgenders are pedophiles. And I mean, here's like, why is a child, why is that a myth?
Well, see,
Why
this
wouldn't
is
it
the
be?
thing. Oh, but I think what Rob is saying, not like why is that a myth, like why is that not a fact, but I think like why is that even in the air as a discussion point is what you're saying, Rob. I believe is what you're saying.
Yes.
It has to do the same thing with what West Indians think, that, you know, all gay people are secretly pedophiles preying on children. I think, you know, it would be the same thing as like if you were to say like, oh, well, you know, when they would be like, oh, well, you can't allow Black people in schools because they're naturally aggressive, and they like things that aren't true. You're using, and again, when one person from my community screws up, it's then seen as a blanket.
It's a
for the
faulty
entire thing.
It's
So
a red
are
herring,
there
a faulty
trans
generalization.
people who are there trans people who are pedophiles? Of course. Is that by and large all trans people? No. So this myth that yes, that's why they want to go into the bathrooms, you know, to prey on children. No, like no, that's not what it is.
But there will be cases where that does happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course,
but it's a faulty generalization.
You can't generalize that. No.
Yeah, that's
just
a
like
hasty
there are cases of
generalization.
aggressive Black people doesn't mean that Black people are aggressive. Just like there are cases of trans people who do prey on children does not make all trans people pedophiles. Same with gay people.
Or that white people are bad cooks. Are some bad cooks?
Well, then.
Gordon Ramsay's a good cook, and I
ain't never tasted his food, so I can't say.
I'd say I'm a phenomenal cook, so.
Well, we're gonna have to try your food then, and we will see, sir. We will see.
Fuck, what was I gonna say? Oh,
hope you like turmeric.
I love turmeric.
It's a good spice.
And rosemary.
I don't cook much with rosemary, but I like the taste.
Yeah. But one thing I always question are absolutes of anything. You know, like this is the way it is, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah.
There will always be exceptions to the rule.
There's anomalies for everything.
Of course. Yeah. This is not trans people being like, oh, I'm going to transition, or so I can just go into bathrooms and prey on children.
Yes.
No. If you believe that, drink a cool cup of bleach, please.
Yeah. Toronto. But however, have there been people who have transitioned who say they were sexually assaulted as a young person, they experienced trauma? We know that hurt people, right?
Of course.
People who experience trauma, that can be carried in their bodies, right?
Of course.
And that might be where that hasty generalization is coming from. Now, during this discussion, you gave me a great question, a closing question. Guys, what's a better band name if I wanted to create a band? Asexual Predator or Pervert?
Asexual predator is more clever. Pervert is just the word. I don't know. Asexual predator.
Pervert hits hard.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to see them live, but asexual predator. That could be interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like music that I would never be into, but
well, you don't know till you've heard it, Chris. So when I have my EP, I'll send it to you.
Heavy metal, all the heavy metal I have heard.
I sent Chris Rise Against, and he's like, "That's too heavy."
Whoa.
No, no. Rise Against the Machine.
No, that's Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, sorry.
Rise.
My bad.
They're just rising against.
Rage Against the No. The one that you sent me, no. If you're screaming into a microphone and making weird demonic sounds, I'm not.
That's Rise Against.
That's right. That's not.
Man, you haven't even heard the best
coming.
Of it yet.
Although I will say coming.
Cannibal Corpse is up next. Evisceration Plague.
Coming from a genre that has goat whore, cattle decapitation,
Emu border,
dead animal assembly plant. Yeah, Pervert's
dying fetus. Like that's a bit
dying
far.
Fetus. Yeah,
that's a bit far. And their music is
so
a bit
violent. My God,
because we're pent up white people.
Lord. You don't like Infant Annihilator?
Another one too far.
Yeah.
Infant Annihilator. Like, and if you heard them sing, you're like, who fucking listens to this? Me.
Yeah. I will say I love the instrumentals.
I know this.
Take away the singing. The instrumentals are deadly.
Cannibal Corpse is pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
But
They put on quite a show.
Hey, you know what? Okay, here's a fair rule. You guys play. We each get to play one song, whatever song it is, and I will listen to it from start to finish. But reciprocity, you guys have to listen to my song too.
I listen to
Even
it.
if
Doesn't mean I have to like it.
Well, of course not. I don't want you to. Nobody wants to be forced to like something. You know what I mean? Like, hey, do you guys
I'll
want to
listen
do this with
anything.
me?
Yeah.
Nobody wants
I've
to go to
gotten
a party
into
where they're
country
just
songs
tolerating.
by just listening. So, like, country is not a genre I usually care for, but there are a couple of songs on my playlist that somebody just sent me. They were like, "You might like this," and I was like, "You know what? I do."
What was it?
One unfortunately was that mullet country singer, which of course he would have used.
Which one?
Shane Raw?
No. Oh my God!
The power of the mullet.
The most popular one right now has a song with Diplo, or he was in a really big scandal for using the N-word recently. White guy with a mullet.
Guy?
Oh my God!
And he used the N-word?
Yeah, and I was like, of course he did. And of course it was the one song that I liked, and of course that had to come out. What is his name? And he like dominated. They dropped him from the country music awards. They were like,
is his name Thomas Wesley?
No. Oh my God, it's gonna drive me crazy. What is his name? Someone in the comments say it. Mullet. He's the only one with a mullet right now.
Country singer mullet.
I don't know about that.
That's Muller.
It'll come up right away. It should.
You're not talking Blake Shelton, are you?
No, Blake Shelton doesn't have a mullet. No.
That was the first one that came up.
Alan
Really?
Jackson.
No.
Billy Ray Cyrus.
Oh, who is this guy?
The song that he has is if I Know Me. Morgan Wallen. Oh no.
That's what I got. That's the same picture I got.
The singer is Morgan
Hold on.
Oh, right here. Ike Morgan Wallen.
Oh, gosh.
26 best mullets. Oh, look at
Blake
that.
Shelton did have a dirty mullet, though.
Oh, that's greasy.
Yeah, Morgan Wallen. And then the other one is the look what God gave her, Thomas
Rhett.
Those are the two country songs, and then I like Dixie Chicks.
Oh yeah, I'm not ready to make nice. That's my anthem.
I like Landslide, which is Stevie Nicks,
Fleetwood Mac.
Fleetwood Mac. But yeah,
Stevie Nicks was in.
There are songs that I have just been given, and they were like, try it, but never in the history of my life has anyone sent me a metal song that I was like, oh yeah.
That sounds like a challenge I am going to accept.
You gonna fail.
Oh.
No.
We'll start you off with some hard rock.
Okay.
Well, apparently Rise Against was too hard, so
I believe Rise Against is punk, maybe.
Yeah,
Not
heavily influenced by Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Okay.
Which, that's a topic for another time. Guys, I want to thank you so much. Right. There's also Against Me.
Oh, they are punk rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, Against
the new
Me is
album.
not too bad.
Yeah, who they had, their singer is transgender woman now.
Oh, there you go.
Really?
Yeah. Full circle. There you go. Guys, thank you.
It's like we know what we're doing.
It's like we do. I do enjoy this. I apologize. I've been in the hot sun all day, so I'm ready for bed. I was fading out a little bit there at the beginning, but I pulled through. So thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed your time. I'm probably wrong about everything.
Bye.
Peace.